Well, David, now it's time for our deep dive, and we're in a mental health series. We're calling it "Let's Talk About Mental Health" because
Hmm.
obviously we want to continue to normalize it more and more. Because I think
Hmm.
if we poll just about anybody and everybody, either they or somebody they love has gone through something
Hmm.
that is a time of struggle mentally, either
Hmm.
yours or a loved one. So tell us about a time either you or a loved one struggled with mental health.
Yeah, it's again, it's so fun having these questions, to think about because 10 different things showed up, and
Ah,
I went through a divorce last couple years, and so it was really just an interesting experience. I was married for 25 years, and and one of the things I did when I first, when we first separated was I rented a place out in the mountains in Colorado that was pretty isolated out on a dirt road, and really just wanted to do this kind of deep dive into myself.
right.
And I mean, it's such a long time to be integrated in a in a family structure that you're pulling apart, and in the midst of it, like I was still working, so I get myself all clear and straight, go on the calls with my clients, and then go back to this dedication I had to really work through my stuff and pull up as much as I could. And I remember one particularly kind of challenging day when a lot of emotional stuff was coming up, and I got this message, as I often do, kind of these channels that come through me, and said, this isn't going to last that long. You maybe have 4 months left in this, and don't waste it. Like, you're going to be held underwater, yeah, for the next 4 months, but there's so much available to you right now in these 4 months. And if you're trying to get out of it, if you're trying to get back above the surface right now, you're
Wow.
missing the point of this. Like, turn every rock over, like just commit to being underwater during this time and seeing what in this vulnerable state that you're in wants to show up and be cleared and be understood better and be released and be processed. And it was a really amazing experience for me because it shifted this piece of like, I gotta get my shit, I gotta get back to this versus like, oh, I only got 4 months. I only got 4 more months of this. I better take every bit of advantage of this. And it really shifted my mindset in it.
Wow.
And it's something that often shows up, for me with clients too, when they're going through a really challenging time of like, like this is temporary. Like, don't waste it. Don't waste this time, And they're like,
Right.
screw you, right? Sometimes at first, but they're like, but as they settle into it, it's like, yeah, like everything that we go through has such purpose for us. And when we can really see it as this opportunity and value that purpose, and know that it's setting us up for something on the other side, that I truly believe that the universe is constantly pushing us towards our life purpose and will use anything at its disposal to get us there. And if we see that, that similar to the idea that the universe is conspiring on our behalf, and it's not a straight path because in order to live our life purpose, we need to work through things. We need to recover from experiences we've had. We need to see ourselves in different ways. We need to grow and become what we're capable of becoming. And if we try to make that too straight of a path, we don't get where we're going. We have to really go deep into those moments and let them have massive value rather than just trying to get our head back above water.
Well, that is extreme. I mean, very well said, David. I can really see so much wisdom and discernment in that,
Mm.
truly. And so you've mentioned a couple times having clients. Now
Hmm.
you're going to have to tell us what you do because it's obviously in this space somehow. Tell me what you do to help other people.
Yeah, yeah. So I have a system that I created that really just channeled through me. It showed up quite spontaneously called Aligned Living. And it teaches people how to restructure their energy field so that, so many of us that are very empathic as as I can definitely feel that's in your field as well. We walk out into the world and, you know, our sense of self is often a reflection of that. We have I was like this emotional body where we're feeling everybody else's stuff. And it's like, cameras and microphones that are out there filming and recording everything and playing it in here. And so our experience of the world is often being inundated by it. The world often goes first. we walk into an experience, we feel it, and then we respond to it. And that feedback loop is always running through us. And it's often where the outer world is louder than our inner world. And that was always true for me. When I had that spontaneous experience, when this download happened for this work, it was over 8 years ago. And it instantly reversed that feedback loop where I could feel that sense of myself much more strongly than my sense of my surroundings. And then there was this
Wow.
whole piece of sorting through my self concept, because I didn't realize how skewed it was when you're seeing yourself as a reflection of your surroundings rather than feeling yourself directly. And when we start to do that work, it just brings us home and starts to dispel a whole bunch of, they're usually not our positive stuff that gets dispelled. It's usually like, our struggles and challenges and ways we've seen ourselves that just isn't really clearly who we are, or ways we've had to cope and show up in order to manage the experience of the world being much louder than we are. And when we reverse that, to have a quiet experience and to be around people, um, any of us that are empathic, it's extraordinary, and what it does for our nervous system, and what it does for our
So,
relationship with ourselves.
okay, when you say shifting energy,
Mhm,
how,
mhm.
so is this kind of like you are working with clients in terms of, like you say, how they see themselves, how they're showing up in the world? And then is this, well, tell me more about it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And so to me, it's very mechanical, and that may sound kind of like a weird thing to say about energy, but we're used to our Wi-Fi, we're used to all these things that are happening invisibly. That there's information that gets passed, any of us that have felt our empathic nature, we could feel somebody who's upset, and maybe they look happy, but they're like something's off. Like, we can look at them and go, it doesn't match up what's going on here.
Right,
And so we walk through a world that's constantly streaming information at us. And a lot
right.
of it's, people's resentment and anger and judgment and fears and jealousy and all these things. And they're still mixed in with all this beauty and positivity. But when it comes at us all the time, we're receiving that information. There's something in us, something innate in us, and I refer to it as our emotional body that has the ability to receive that information. And we're often just wide open with it. We just walk out and go, what's the world telling me? As opposed to going, well, what if I don't need that to be louder than me? It's still interesting
Right.
and I still value the reflection, but maybe like 10% volume and 90% should be me and 10% should be that. But we've
Mm,
never regulated it. And my take on that is that you know there's a lot of five sensory people on this planet who use their taste, touch, smell, hearing to understand the world and understand who they are. And as babies, that's what they use, right? They put everything in their mouths, they touched everything, they they,
eh,
they had that experience. But those of us that had this extrasensory ability, this ability to feel other people's emotions, we just turned that on outside too and said, who are we? What's going on here? Who are these people? And what does this mean about us? And it never occurred to us that they didn't need to be locked on outside. We just turned them on and left them. And so when I got this spontaneous download, it was being shown like we have control over that. We can place that same ability to feel deeply, that empathic ability, we can place it on ourselves and feel ourselves as deeply as we've been feeling everybody else. And the moment we do that, there's a reprioritizing that happens. We move from impulsively taking on everybody else's discomfort and trying to make them comfortable so we can be comfortable, and
uh,
to really feeling what we need. And then we get to choose if we're going to help other people rather than impulsively having to abandon whatever we're up to reprioritize somebody else's discomfort because we've known we can't be comfortable if the person next to us isn't.
you know what? This is so fascinating to me because I feel like you, I mean, you've already sensed that I'm empathetic,
Mhm.
and like
Mhm.
everything that you're saying, I am so flabbergasted to think that there's one, the recognition of it and the awareness of it,
Mhm.
and two, then the
Sure.
idea that this actually can be shifted.
Yeah, yeah. And it's very mechanical, like it's instantaneous because it is that literal. My awareness, if we close our eyes and go, oh my God, I can't believe it got dark, like that's not a surprise to us. But if we take our energy and our awareness and we tap it into somebody else's emotions, and we feel it inside, and then we stop doing that and tap into ourselves, like if we sit with it for a minute, it becomes logical. It becomes, well, yeah, that's not surprising then. If I plug into me instead of plugging into that, I have a different experience. And now I feel myself first, and I feel myself more powerfully. And oh wait, I don't think I want to sacrifice myself for that. I think I want to do this for me. And then when I do this for me, I'll be able to support people a lot more. And then people stop being contagious, so I can stay present with them without getting exhausted. And I can help them way more than I could when they were contagious, when I was actually trying
Right.
to make myself okay by helping them. And so it's amazing, as you said, like that realization as empaths, like, oh, there's an adjustment to that thing. Wait a minute. Why
Yeah.
didn't anybody ever tell me?
Yes, yes, that's the part for me that's very intriguing. The
Mhm,
idea that there is actually a way to shift that. That's very compelling. Okay, so
mhm,
I'm curious now about the timeline, this spontaneous download.
mhm.
This come on the heels of that very dark and difficult time where, you had the realization. When would you say you were depressed and anxious? I mean, if we had to put words to it, would you say that that was a period of that?
You mean when I was describing going through divorce or the,
Yes,
you know,
yes.
I wasn't.
Okay,
And it's such a weird thing about because I'd already had these tools, right? And so I could be in this highest part of myself and also aware of my body was carrying a lot of stuff. There was old trauma, there was all these experiences, and there was old patterns. And so, when we develop that capacity to tap into exactly what we want to tap into, which is, our highest version of us, we have that. And so we can utilize and go, God, this feels really good, but I can't ignore, I was just hearing the body keeps the score, right? Wasn't that Louise Hay's piece,
right.
right? We can't ignore all the stuff that we have experienced in the unconscious and all that. And so it's so interesting to have this really beautiful place that we can be and also know that there's some really rough stuff going on and go, I'm going to save that beautiful space for a different day. I'm going to go into the rough stuff. And because like that's what spiritual bypassing, right? If we just stay here and just go, I'll just keep holding that other stuff away because I got this other great place I can be, but it affects me. It keeps me from showing up. It keeps me from expressing myself. It keeps me from feeling expansive inside. And so much of the work we do once we claim that space is we start to go, I'm cleaning all this up now because I'm in here with it. When I was out there instead of in here, it didn't really matter so much what was in here because I didn't need the space. And this is what I've found with clients is like, as soon as we move in, like I'm cleaning up this, and we do it very quickly because we realize like, oh, this is just me now. This is like, I don't need to be corded or tethered to how it happened or the collective wound behind it, which makes it so hard to move. I can just go, is this serving me anymore? And is this really my truth? And when we can sit with it, it tends to dispel, it tends to fall apart, it tends to clear and it moves very quickly because we actually have a reference point for our truth rather than a reference point of more challenging stuff coming at us. And does that make sense? It's
It
I know it's
does, it does. So you already had these tools before you had that
Mhm.
dark time, is what I am gathering.
Yeah, which made it kind of a not that dark time, even though it was super challenging. I mean, there's times in my
Right.
life before I had the tools where I had very dark times, and it was like there wasn't a reprieve. But at any moment, I could be going, and that's I think part of that message I got was stay in it. Like, don't keep pulling yourself out trying to get into a brighter place. Like, stay in it. Like, value this, value the struggle, value the emotions, value all of that. Um, because you can bypass it. You can just keep going back here. And I would do
Right.
that to show up for them. And then I'd fall and go, okay, let me drop back into this other part of me that needs some support. And
Wow.
I showed up to support myself, kind of basically is what it turned into.
Okay, so I think I've got a couple more questions. Yeah, I mean, very intriguing.
Mm,
Um, I guess one thing I'm wondering is, how could this be helpful for people who are struggling, like maybe with a
mm,
season of depression or
mhm,
anxiety or some of these other mental health struggles? Do you
mhm.
find that this could be a helpful tool for that?
Yeah, absolutely, right. And so when we look at depression, anxiety, all these things, there's a cause behind it. There's something that we're experiencing either inside ourselves that's trapped in there, where we're reliving it and we're looping in it, and it has its own life that just pulls us into that place. Or, for me, like I had massive anxiety. I used to have anxiety attacks a lot, like around college and just afterward. I was just so sensitive to energy coming in that it would just overwhelm me at times. And I was really struggling with reconciling the way the world was with the way my inner world was. And just that different, like
Mhm.
I just couldn't figure out what my place was here and couldn't see my future. And so as I'd feel all that come in and just be in complete contrast to who I am, like it just really spun me out a lot. And so having, particularly with anxiety, when we start to gain control over what we allow in and what we don't, to me, anxiety is this influx. People, it feels like it's coming from inside of us, but it's generally not. It's generally coming in
Mm,
from the world in this overstimulus. Kind of like if you've ever
yes.
been, like struggling with something and you don't have much bandwidth left, and then somebody comes in and they start trying to dump their stuff on you and they want to tell you about, how rough they have it. And you're just like, I can't do that right now. But if we couldn't say I can't do that right now, and it just keeps coming at us, it pushes us over the edge. And then we self-isolate and we shut down and we come up with all these coping mechanisms. And so anxiety is a big one, but depression is too, because it's losing track of who we are. It's getting caught up in a loop, usually in some trauma, some experiences we've had that demonstrate to us this possibility of who we might be that's doesn't feel good. And if we don't have a reference point of who we truly are, like that other reference point becomes our identity. And I've worked with, quite a few people who are in depression, and they're just like, as they start to have a reference point, they have to be really ready at that stage of depression to go, like,
Mhm.
something's got to give. Like, this is not
Right.
interesting to me anymore. Like there's nothing, the drama of this, I'm done. Um, and so that place, like, then they go, once they have that other reference point of like, oh, this is where my light is. And that's what I was talking about when I was in that stage. I'm like, space going through the divorce. I was like, I know where my light is. And I also know where this other stuff is in me, and that's not my light. And
Right.
so if I have both at the same time, I can really work through it and I can get clear about who I am and who I'm not. But if
Right.
I don't have a reference point, I'm just, you know, churning around in the struggle, and I don't have a place to stabilize off
Mhm.
of that's a greater truth
Right.
than, whatever my depression is.
Yes, absolutely.
Mm.
It Just, there aren't words right now. I
Mm.
have to process all this, but I have one final question, then I want to know where people can find you.
Sure, sure.
How could this work with people who, like a person of faith?
Yeah.
Do you feel like this is, how is that, how could it be compatible with that versus, or
Yeah.
maybe
Yeah.
it's not?
Yeah. And I have clients that are, everything from, devout religious people that is their 100% their reference point, all the way up to atheists. And they just see it as energy, and or I should say all the way down to atheists. I don't know. I don't want to say it. But you know, when we look at it through the lens of energy, which is often how I experience God as an energy. And if that was uncomfortable with me, I could just simply call it energy. But if calling it energy was uncomfortable, it's God. And so,
Right.
to me, that like it's the lens at which we're experiencing the energy. And I never used the word God before. Like, it was, I think I had a lot of kind of religious challenge stuff growing up. Like, I'd go to church and go, this doesn't feel like what they're saying, like it was, a lot of people. I remember actually my first house or my second house, I guess, was across the street from a church. And I remember watching them come out and just like cut each other off in the parking lot and running, trying to get out. I was like, that didn't like, I don't know how to reconcile this. And so, I kind of blanketed it as like, oh, that's not, um, but what I found is I work with a lot of religious people where they have this very clear, direct connection with God, this feeling that says, like, He's here to support me. And when I can, the more direct that I can feel to me, and that's really what happens when we go in and reference off of ourselves, we start to reference off our connection with God. And when we reference off our connection with God, it just becomes alive in us. and we get the sense of who we need to be and go, I can't, have this much light coming through me, this much connection with God, and be these other things that I've been stuck in being before. And that is that reference point that I was talking about. And so, we can call it our truest self, we can call it God, we can call it energy. But it is one of the things I found is that my religious clients, it almost is easier for, because they already know it. They just have known it in a different way. And when they go, God, like, this is the connection with God I've been looking for. And when they feel it,
Mhm.
they just go, oh, like, I just wanted it to be more direct. I wanted it to be more palpable for me. And then when it is, it just, everything that they believe just comes into a much more concrete experience. And so it works really well.
Well, color me completely intrigued, fascinated, compelled, curious, all kinds of wonderful words. If our listeners are like me, where can people find you?
Yeah, so my webpage is davidwaldas.com. And so all my programs are listed on there, whether it's, I do group programs, and I still do some one-to-one. And then I'm launching a coaches academy to train people to do what I do. That I've been doing it already for the last uh, really 6 years. I've been training coaches, but I've been kind of hand selecting clients and going, hey, would you like to learn to? And now it's like I can just feel how it just needs to be out there. And so really, so excited about launching that and getting this in a lot of people's hands, these tools, and
Fantastic.
so that it can get out there even more.
Well, thank you, David. I am beyond grateful. For me, this was a divine appointment. I am very yes, very curious. And listeners, if you're curious too, go check them out, davidwaldas.com. And that Waldas is WALDAS.com.
Correct. Yeah. Thank
All
you so
right,
much.
David. Thank you so much.